Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Aromage deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck just got some insane support recently. It's super fun to be able to play and I'm really excited to show you guys this list. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like your name, description, single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Rosalina. This card is definitely a 3-of in the deck. It's probably one of those powerful support cards we got recently, with a really powerful ability that quick effect, you can discard this card and then target an aroma monster that you control and gain life points equal to half its attack. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can special summon 1 non-tuner aroma monster from your deck. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except plant monsters, which is totally fine because in this build, that's pretty much all we're summoning. This card is basically full combo and definitely a 3-of in the build. We then play 3 copies of Lurel. Lurel is really good as a 3-of as well in the build because if your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if you gain life points, you can target 1 non-tuner plant monster on the field and it's treated as a tuner this turn, which helps us going for a bunch of synchro plays. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, then you can gain 500 life points. We then play 3 copies of Angelica. Angelica is great in this deck as a tuner because it helps us actually synchro summon into a bunch of really cool aroma cards. And during either player's turn, you can discard this card and then target 1 aroma monster in your graveyard and gain life points equal to target's attack. And while your life points are higher than your opponent, then you control an aroma monster and this card's in the grave, you can actually bring this card back to your side of the field but banish when it leaves the field, which is a crazy powerful effect just to be able to basically gain life points and bring this card out to your side of the field, which is so cool about this card. So you can start synchro summoning into some really powerful cards. We then play just a single copy of Jasmine. Jasmine lets us draw a card, which is why we play this card as a 1-of in the build, but now you really only need a single copy of this card now because you have so many other cards that can get to this card. I feel like 1 is really all you need. We then play a single copy of Rosemary. Rosemary is really good as a 1-of in the build because while your life points are higher than your opponent's, if a plant type monster you control attacks, your opponent cannot activate monster effects until the end of the damage step, and once per turn if you gain life points you can try to face that monster on the field and change its battle position, which is a really cool ability basically just to change your opponent's battle positions. We then play a single copy of Majora. Majorum is great in the deck as a 1-of, but you really only need a single copy of this card, that while your life points are higher than your opponent's, you take no battle damage from attacks involving your plant monsters. And it also has the ability you can only use each of the following effects this card once per turn. That when a plant monster you control is destroyed by battle, you can special summon this card from your hand and then gain 500 life points. And if you gain life points, you can target cards in your opponent's graveyard up to the number of aroma monsters that you control and banish them, which is an insanely powerful effect to be able to use with this card. Since we are playing a plant deck, we're also playing 3 copies of Lone Fire Blossom. Lone Fire Blossom is just really good in any plant deck to be able to get the exact monster you want on your side of the field, which is just so cool about this card. Usually I'm using this card to be able to summon out our copy of Rosalina, which is just a really awesome card to be able to summon out with Lone Fire Blossom. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom's an amazing hand trap just to stop your opponent from touching the deck. We then play 3 copies of Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. We always want our life points to be higher than our opponent, so this card is a definite hand trap to be able to use in this build because it's just such a powerful card that each time your opponent special summons an effect monster during the turn that you discarded this card, during the main phase or the battle phase, you gain life points equal to that monster's attack. And if you did not gain any life points from this effect, your life points are halved during the end phase, so you always want to be able to gain at least a little bit of life points off this card's ability so that your life points can be higher than your opponent's, which actually can lead to a lot of victories because if your opponent doesn't respect this card, you're going to gain too many life points for them to be able to play through. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get in to the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of 1 for 1. 1 for 1 is really good in the decks. We play a lot of level 1s we want to get on our side of the field, so this card just helps us get those cards out on the field. We then play a single copy of Aroma Garden. Aroma Garden is really good just as a 1-of in the build, but it has the effect that once per turn, if you control an aroma monster, you can gain 500 life points. Also, all monsters that you control gain 500 attack and defense until the end of the opponent's next turn, even if this card leaves the field, which can actually be really big to help you go in for game. And if a face-up Aroma monster you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you gain 1,000 life points. So this card is constantly giving you life points, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. Pot of Prosperity is great in the deck because you don't need everything in the extract, especially since we're playing multiples of a lot of cards in the extract. So this card is really good just to help us dig into the deck for the exact cards that we need. We then play 3 copies of Aroma Blend. Aroma Blend is really good as a 3-up. This card is insane because it has the ability to discard a card to place one of your wins cards from your hand or deck face up in your spell and trap card zone, which is a really cool ability because we have a bunch of different cards we can actually use with this card's ability. And this card also can banish itself from your graveyard to let you fusion summon a plant fusion monster from your extract by banishing its materials from your hand or field. And if your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can also banish plant monsters from your graveyard as material as well, which is an insane ability to let us fusion summon into our new fusion monster, which is so cool to be able to do. I love that about this card, and just makes it super easy to summon out our new boss monster. We then also play 3 copies of Aroma Gardening. Aroma Gardening is really cool as a 3-of in the build, because if you normally or special summon an Aroma monster, except during the damage step, you gain 1,000 life points, which is huge in this deck. And when an opponent's monster declares an attack, while your life points are lower than your opponent's, you can special summon an Aroma monster from your deck, which is a pretty cool ability to be able to use with this card. So, that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start with a single copy of Blessed Winds. Blessed Winds is one of our awesome wind continuous trap cards we can place on our side of the field. And has the ability that you can activate one of its 3 awesome abilities that you can send a plant monster from your hand or face certain field to grave to gain 500 life points, target a plant monster in the graveyard, shuffle in the deck, and then gain 500 life points, or pay 1,000 life points to special summon a Aroma monster from your graveyard, which is a huge ability to be able to use this card as basically a monster reborn every turn. We then play a single copy of Dried Winds. Dried Winds is also really good as a 1-of in the build, because if you gain life points, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and destroy it, which is an insane effect to be able to pop a card on the field. Also, if you control an Aroma monster and your life points is at least 3,000 or higher than your opponent's, you can pay life points equal to the difference and destroy face-up monsters that your opponent controls whose combined attack is less than or equal to your life points that you paid to activate this card's ability, which can equal actually a board wipe with cards like Ghost or Spooky Dogwood, which is so cool to be able to use with Ghost Sister, because if you use it with Ghost Sister, you're going to already gain life points that the monster's attacks are, so you can use this card to basically board wipe your opponent, which is super cool. We then play a single copy of Humid Winds. Humid Winds is also a great 1-of in the build, and these are actually the 3 Winds cards that you can actually place on your side of the field to continuous traps with your other cards, which is really cool. And it has the ability to pay 1,000 life points to add an Aroma monster from your deck to your hand, and if your life points are lower than your opponent's, you can gain 500 life points, which is a pretty cool ability. We then also play 2 copies of Aroma Healing. Aroma Healing is a great 2-of in the build, but I feel like you really only need 2 copies of this card unless you gain 1,000 life points for each Aroma monster you control with a different name. And you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target an Aroma monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but banish when it leaves the field, then gain 500 life points, which is a really cool effect. We then also play 3 more hand traps in the deck, which is going to be 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence is great as a 3-of, just to stop your opponent's monster effects and also lock down entire columns of spells and traps. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start off with our new fusion monster, Magnolia. Magnolia is such a cool card. This card is really easy to summon out to your side of the field because it just takes an Aroma monster plus a plant monster to make this card. And while your life points are higher than your opponent's, plant monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And once per turn, you can pay 2,000 life points and banish cards on the field equal to the number of your wins cards that you control, which is a really insane ability just to be able to get rid of up to 3 cards. And once per turn, if you gain life points even during the damage step, then you can make all plant monsters that you currently control gain attack equal to the life points you gain, which can actually make your monsters huge with this card's ability. We then play 2 copies of Majorum. Majorum is really cool as a 2-of in the build as well. The Synchro form is while your life points are higher than your opponent cannot target plant monsters you control with card effects, which is a really cool ability. And you can also use these effects on this card. If this card is Synchro summoned, you get to add one of your wins cards from your deck to your hand, and if you gain life points, you can target one card your opponent controls and destroy it. We then also play a single copy of the Synchro version of Rosemary. I feel like 1 copy is pretty good in this build, as this card is ability while your life points are higher than your opponent's, all plant monsters that you control gain 500 attack and defense, which is pretty big because you have a lot of effects in this deck that give you bonus attack points, which is really good to help you go in for game. She also has the ability once per turn, if you gain life points, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, and that face-up card has its effects negated until the end of the turn, which is a really good effect to be able to just negate cards on the field. We then also play a single copy of Circle of the Fairies. Circle of the Fairies is just a really good plant synchro monster to be able to play in this build. We then also play a single copy of Empress of Blooms. Empress of Blooms is also a great card to be able to play in this deck. She gains 400 attack for each plant monster that you control, except this card, and during your main phase you can special summon a level 5 or higher plant monster from your hand or grave in defense position, which is a really insane ability. We then also play a single copy of Queen of Thorns. Queen of Thorns is actually one of my favorite cards in the entire extra deck because each player must pay 1,000 life points for each monster they normal or special summon from their hand, except for plant type monsters, and we're only playing plants in this deck, so we're never going to have to pay life points, but it makes the gap between our life points and our opponent's life points huge. We then play a single copy of the Plant Link 4. This is just a really good boss monster to be able to make in the deck. I really like this card, but I feel like 1 is all you need. We then play 2 copies of the new Link version of Rosemary, which is insane. This card is really, really good in the deck. If this card is special summon, you get to add an Aroma card from your deck to your hand, and if you gain land points, even during the damage step, you can special summon up to 3 Aroma monsters from your hand to zones this card points to, which is really cool. It also has the ability to contribute 1 monster that this card points to, and then target 1 card on the field and banish it, and if you do, gain 1,000 life points, which is such a powerful effect. This card is definitely a 2-of in the build. We're then playing just 2 copies of Jasmine. I feel like 2 is really all you need in the deck. If you want to play a 3rd copy of this card, you could drop probably the Queen of Thorns. I just really like this card and made room for it by dropping a single copy of Jasmine. You could play 3 copies of Jasmine because of how powerful this card is, but I feel like 2 is really all you need as you're playing through this deck, because it has the ability, if your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card and any plant monster it points to cannot be destroyed by battle, and you can trade a monster that this card points to special summon a plant monster from your deck in defense position, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn, and once per turn, if you gain life points, you get to add a plant monster from your deck to your hand. You're trying to make this card as quickly as possible, but you really only need 2 copies. We then play 2 copies of Peony. Peony is also a card that you probably could drop down to 1 to play the 3rd copy of the Jasmine, but this card is just so good as an extender in the build. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Aroma before, you should definitely give this deck a try. I absolutely love all the new support that we just got recently. And it's just a really fun deck to be able to play. It's a really cool deck to be able to just summon out all your different Aroma monsters to your side of the field and just see how high you can get your life points to, especially cards like Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood in this deck. So that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.